Welcome everybody. My name's Terri Bourne. The first thing I'd just like to say is about the pivoting. When Chi asked me about whether I could sort of talk about pivoting, I had to look it up because for me it wasn't a word that was sort of in my vocabulary. I know we've just had a little discussion about that. It sort of just seems like a weird word. So I'll tell you what it means. It means a fundamental change in the direction of your business. And I've certainly done a few of those. So perhaps I have pivoted. And she also asked me about scaling. And so I looked that up as well. And that's about growing, expanding, developing your business. And so I've certainly done both of those things. What I would like to say just at the beginning is that I don't have a corporate business. I don't have a multinational, massive, millions of pound turnover business. I've just got a business. Well, I've got several businesses, but I'm going to talk about just one of them today. And it's sort of it's my bread and butter business. It's the one that keeps us all going, and it's okay. It does okay by us. So I started that in 2001, and it's a childcare business. And unfortunately, sometimes when you say childcare business, people say things like, "Oh, I know a childminder." No, not a childminder business. It's a childcare business. And so we, over the years, we've done after school, before school, holiday, 0 to 5 provision, preschool, nursery provision, and one or two other things that I'll tell you about later. And in the early days, I just decided that I was going to do this. I didn't want to do it because it didn't feel like the right thing to do. My background is teaching. I've been a head teacher at a school in Spain and came over to England, and I was being asked to run a before school club. So it didn't feel like it was the right thing for me, but I couldn't get anyone to look after my own children, so I couldn't get a job. So I thought, well, I'll go for it. And that was sort of the beginning. In the next sort of couple of years, so within 2 years, I'd got 9 different sites. And when I say sites, that means different schools that were operating. They could have operated 1 club or 2 clubs, or some of them operate sort of up to 4 clubs. So the sort of beginning of my journey was very, very fast and furious. So much so that by 2003, I had to say to my husband, "You're going to have to give up work to come and work with me in the family business," just because it was too busy. I was sort of a bit overwhelmed. In the next year after that, when my husband joined, we both started running the business, visiting the site, sorting everyone out, training people, the usual things that you do. We ended up by 2005 with 16 different sites. So September 2005, we opened our 16th site. We were operating 33 different clubs, 16 sites within 4 different authorities. So it was pretty busy. So got a little bit of overwhelm and decided at that point, and I think this was a pivot really, it was certainly a mental thing for me, because at that time it was me and my husband struggling to do everything ourselves, keeping it in the family. And at that point I needed to have someone else helping. So I trained up one of my managers for her to be a manager within the business. So that was quite a big stepping stone, I suppose, for me on a personal level, because I like to be in control. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a sort of, control freak, maybe, I don't know. But I do like to be in control. So to give someone else that authority to say yes or no and make those decisions was quite a biggie way back in, probably in about 2004 that happened. And then sort of trying to run all of those different sites, different businesses. You can imagine I had a lot of staff. I can't remember how many we had at the sort of maximum, in the 70s, 80s, members of staff that I was working with as well. And then the recession hit. So when the recession hit, I was quite new to business. I'd never seen anything like that before. I didn't know what was happening. What I could see from my little sort of space was that prices were going up, but nothing else seemed to be happening. It was all a bit weird. I'd never experienced it before. So I took the decision to I used to put the staff wages up by what I called increments every year. So I took the decision to put the wages up by several increments, because I thought, well, they need more money, because I can see the prices going up, not realising it was a recession coming. So just before the recession, I bumped everyone's wages up, and which obviously cost me a lot more to do. And then what happened during that time was I started to sort of think, gosh, what if this business won't survive? So what I then did, this is probably one of your pivots, one of your changes, was I went back to college, and I thought, I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I didn't want to be a teacher anymore, but I needed to change tack. So I thought, what I'll do is I'll do HR. So I did a HR degree, a master's degree at MMU. And that obviously took me several years, 3 years or so. And but whilst I was doing that, I had to do a dissertation. In the final year, I had to do a dissertation, and I didn't know what to do it on at all, because I thought, oh, what's going to happen? I'm not sure. I didn't really want to do it on childcare, so I wanted something else. And I spoke to one of the tutors, and she sort of asked me what I did, and I told her, and she stood back and she said to me, oh, you're a female entrepreneur. And I thought, well, how bloody rude. How rude. How dare somebody call me an entrepreneur? You know, and all this, that and the other. But I took it, I went back home, looked it up, and I thought, oh, it's not as bad as I thought. This entrepreneur word's not as bad as I thought. So I thought, right, I'm a female entrepreneur, I'm a woman entrepreneur, whatever. So my first dissertation was based on women entrepreneurs and work-life balance, mainly because I was in the position where I was really juggling everything that I could to try and run these businesses, my family, etc. So that was my first sort of move into entrepreneurship, which is what I ended up writing my books about. How am I doing for time? Are you all right, Claire Marie? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sure are, yeah. You've got another.
Okay, so that was my first sort of move into entrepreneurship, and that's important because some years later I decided that I wanted to go back to college again and do my doctorate, still running my businesses. And this time, because I ran not just a childcare business, I was running a technology business, which was another pivot. We decided when the recession hit, it was hard for people to pay for the childcare. So I set up my own childcare voucher company. I don't know if you remember those. They've sort of gone a bit out of fashion now, where you swap your tax insurance for childcare vouchers. So I did that. And we sort of, it wasn't a brilliant success. We weren't just using it for ourselves. I was doing it for to help the parents, but we set up a whole sort of business around it. So I finished that, I think, in 2015 when the government said, we're not going to do it anymore. They did for a few more years, but they said not. So that was quite a pivot. Going back to college, I went back again to college. I went to Sheffield University, what's it called now? Hallam University. It's called the Poly when I was there first time. So my doctorate was in portfolio women entrepreneurs, and those are people who, like me, collect businesses. In fact, in the early days, I collected all those 16 businesses and then had to start to think about pruning them down. As I was learning more about business and how to do business, if you like, rather than just doing it, I realised that I needed to be a bit more selective. So we started to prune the business down and prune until eventually, during lockdown we've ended up with just one of our 0 to 5 provisions. So now my whole business has gone from 16, then we added on, took away, etc. And we've now ended up with just one of the original, the ones that I suppose I've ended up with the one that I felt was the best one, profitable wise, an easier one to run in terms of everyone's on one site. You're not asking people to do silly hours like, would you work from 7:30 till 9 for me? And then, by the way, could you come back at 3 and work till 6? Because that was hard times. During that time, I also made another pivot, which was in 2012 to 13. we decided we were going to expand the business into Spain. I've got connections to Spain, so that's just seemed like a really good idea, really easy thing to do. And we went out there and to set up the outer school provision in Spain. What we found was that they didn't want it, they didn't understand it, they didn't want it, but it was a really interesting learning curve for us, apart from spending a year living in Madrid while we investigated. We went in September. By October, I knew it wasn't going to work, but I didn't really mention that to anyone back at home. But what it did do was it enabled me to see if the business could run without me. And that was really important to me because we'd had so much involvement in it. So we took the opportunity to step back under the guise of still trying to work it out, guys, still trying to see if it's working. And that's when the idea about retirement first came in, or semi-retiring, or looking at ways of running your business without being completely hands-on all the time. So that sort of brings me right up to date with, I wrote a book. I wrote a book about retiring from your business. The reason I wrote it really was because I couldn't find that book. I could find about when you've retired, how many cruises you can go on, what you can do with the money. I could find those kind of books, but what I couldn't find was the book that really niche bit of when, as a business owner, you are thinking, well, what happens next? What do I do with all this? How can I make it so that I still benefit? Which was what I was trying to look at. So I wrote the book. This is the book, beginning of the end. And yeah, I'll tell my good news now. Last night I went to some awards because this book was voted into the Business Book of the World. Business Book of the World. Might be the world.
Yeah, that's the next one. Don't worry.
Just the year, I think. And so it was shortlisted in the specialist category, which it is very specialist. So it's not the sort of book that everyone would want to read, but it sort of got me going on. I suppose that's a movement into authorship from my business. I've still got the business and the businesses, but then I wrote another one, From Amaze to Amazing, and this one is for brand new entrepreneurs, because I just thought, well, when people write books and they're business owners, often they write a book that helps their business. And I looked at the childcare side of things and it didn't really float my boat, but the entrepreneurship did. And that's why I wrote the 2 books that I've written so far. And I suppose for the future, I don't know where I'm going to go next. My business is ticking over and I've got that sorted. So I don't really need to sort of be too much involved in that. And I'm sort of toying with the idea about writing again. I've not written anything in lockdown, believe it or not. I wrote both of these just before lockdown and then messed with them in lockdown. And they obviously got published. But I don't know where I'm going to go next. I'm very restless though at the moment, and that usually means that something's going to change, something's going to happen. So that's sort of me really. I've missed some bits out, but there's various sort of things along the way, as you all know, with your own businesses and things where you're trying to do lots and lots of things at the same time, which is what I tried to do. But then I suppose over the years, and it's taken me a long time, I've then pruned down. I've become more of a businesswoman than a collector, because I was just collecting businesses at the beginning, because it was easy. I was, word of mouth, and everyone was saying, oh yeah, come and work here, come and work here. So that's me, really.